Last week we compared and contrasted characters in a story, or in dramas. This week we're going to compare and contrast settings and events in stories. The setting is when and where a story takes place. When you compare and contrast settings, you consider how the scenes are alike and different. When you compare and contrast events, you consider how things that happened are similar or different. Looking at the details will help you see the similarities and differences. So we don't want to just go on the surface, but we want to go deeper into the details of a setting or of an event. If we compare and contrast these two pictures here, we see these are both from The Wizard of Oz. We see in the first picture, it's outside. They're both actually outside. This one's at a farm. This one is in a forest. They both have buildings in them. This is like a barnyard. This is a house covered in flowers. I've got some flowers there on the roof. They both have trees in them. Since this is a farm, we can see a tree, and this is a forest. We can see the trees in the forest. They both have They both have Dorothy in the setting. So let's talk about the events happening in these pictures. So here I forgot something. A big difference, actually. This is dark and gloomy and gray, and this is bright and cheerful and in color. If you've seen this movie, it's actually getting ready to storm here, so we know it's dark and gloomy. Not only is it in black and white, but it's also getting ready to storm. All right, so now if we talk about the events that are happening in these settings, here we might not be able to tell exactly because this is a picture and not the movie, but you can see Dorothy's mouth is open. So she's holding her dog, and she's either talking or singing to her dog or to herself. This might be when she's singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I'm not sure. And then in this picture, when they're in the forest, they're in the land of Oz, Dorothy doesn't seem to be talking. She seems to be listening. Her and the Scarecrow seem to be listening to the Tin Man. And he seems sad if we look at his face. He seems pretty sad. This is probably where they learn that the Tin Man needs a heart. So you're going to take those things that we talked about and you're going to put them on the chart on the following page. In the photo on the left, it was a farm in Kansas. We said it was a farm, barnyard, same thing. I don't really see the animals except for the dog. It has a tree, a fence, and distant fields, yes, and it's gray and cloudy and gloomy. We said all of those things except that it had animals in it. The events, the girl's holding the dog, Dorothy was holding the dog, and the girl is talking or singing to herself. You can use these words, you can use your own words, you can use the words we said a few minutes ago when we were talking about it. Alright, the picture on the right is in the land of Oz. It's in the woods. There's a house with flowers. It's colorful and beautiful. The event, the girl and the Scarecrow are listening to the Tin Man. And the Tin Man seems to be sad about something. So again, you can use these words, you can use the words that we talked about, or you can use your own words to describe the setting and events. If you need to, go ahead and pause the video. Moving on to the pocket watch. The closed reading habit down here on the bottom says when you reread the story, underline details that show setting and events both outside the house and in the front room. So as we read, we need to underline these events like it tells us to. So Margaret had gone out to the barn to fetch a pail of milk. On her way back inside, she gazed at the green and peaceful fields. Green and peaceful fields is describing what's outside because she's on her way inside. She's not in there yet. So she's gazed at the green and peaceful fields of her family's Connecticut farm. So that's a setting. They're on a farm in Connecticut. It was sunny, mild day in April 1775. So it's a sunny, mild day. This should be painting a picture in your head. It's in 1775. That was like a long time ago. You should be picturing a farm with no electricity. You should be picturing the girl probably wearing some clothes that you would consider outdated, but back then they were not outdated. They're probably dull in color and very plain. So calm, so the outside was calm, it wasn't windy, it was calm. So calm compared with what Margaret feared might be coming. For the last week, fighting had erupted between the British and the colonists in the towns of Lexington and Concord. So the first things we underlined were about the setting, and this is our events that have been happening. Fighting between the British and colonists. Margaret wondered if there would be more fighting. Grasping a pail of milk, Margaret turned toward the house and went through the back door and into the kitchen, where her mother was preparing supper. The quiet she had experienced outside, that's still describing outside. The quiet she had experienced outside was shattered almost as soon as she set down the pail. Her two young brothers were in the front room, began shouting and arguing. The sounds of a struggle began. So now we're in the front room, we have a new setting. Events, we have shouting and arguing. There's a sound of a struggle. Margaret and her mother went into the dark, dusty front room. Dark and dusty is describing the inside room, to see what the fight was about. George, the younger of the two, was hunched over and clutching something shiny. So that's an event. He's clutching something shiny. He's clutching something shiny in his hand. William, a head taller than George, was clambering over his little brother and trying to pry the shiny object loose. So here's an event. He's climbing over his brother, trying to get whatever's in his hand out. "It's mine!" shouted George, pulling away from his brother. "Father said I could carry it today." "Why should you get to? I'm older," shouted William. "It's mine by right." "Boys," said their mother, "how can you fight over a timepiece?" So now we know what they were fighting over, what was being clutched in their hand. A timepiece is a pocket watch. So that's another event. That's what they're fighting over. "How can you fight over a timepiece when some of our neighbors have just lost their lives fighting the British?" So in the outside, Margaret was concerned about the fights between the British and the colonists. And on the inside, they were thinking about the neighbors who had lost their lives fighting the British. George and William looked at each other and then looked down, ashamed. Margaret was glad when the two promptly apologized to each other and admitted it really didn't matter who got to carry the watch. Brothers, they agreed, should not fight. Moving on to the next page, we're going to take the details that we underlined from the story to fill in our graphic organizer. Then we're going to use our graphic organizer to write a paragraph about the similarities and differences. So paragraph 1 was about the outside, was a barn and a view of fields. Sunny day in April 1775 on a farm in Connecticut. Those were all details that we underlined. The events that were happening, she's walking back in with a pail of milk. We did not underline that detail. We forgot about that one. So you can go back. That's actually in the second paragraph. Grasping the milk, Margaret turned toward the house and went through the back door. That's actually in the second paragraph. That's misleading because this says paragraph 1, but she is going to get milk. And she sees the peaceful field surrounding the farm. I would also put here that she's thinking about the fighting between the British and the colonists because that is another event that happened in paragraph 1. It's not something that they put on this answer key, but it did happen in the story. All right, so in paragraphs 3 through 6, we are describing the house's front room. This is on the inside. We underlined that it was dark and dusty. Probably dark because they don't have electricity. The boys are arguing over who's going to carry their father's watch or timepiece. The boys regret their fighting when they are reminded by their mothers that neighbors have lost their lives in the fight with the British. So they're fighting and they regret their fight because they think about the fighting that's occurring between colonists and the British. So both of these events are concerned with the British and the colonists fighting. One just has a girl thinking about in one setting, the girl is just thinking about the events of the colonists and British fighting. And in the other event, the boys are regretting their actions, thinking about the people who have lost their lives in those fights. So we're going to take these ideas now and put them in a paragraph on page 112, I believe. Yes. So on page 112, it wants you to compare and contrast the main settings of the pocket watch. Use details to describe the similarities and differences. So we don't have to compare and contrast the events, just the setting. And we're going to use details that we underlined in our paragraph. If we quote something from the story, we put quotation marks around it. You can say in the text it states, or you can just use those words without saying that. So here's an example. Yours does not have to be exactly like this, but here's an example. So both settings in the pocket watch are alike in being located on a Connecticut farm in April 1775. Whether it's inside or outside, they're both on a farm in Connecticut, April 1775. But those settings are very different. Paragraph 1 describes an outdoor setting. The day is sunny and mild and calm. Sunny and mild and calm are the exact words that we underline that describe the outside. The fields are green and peaceful. In contrast, so here I'm saying how they are alike. I use the words alike. I can also use the words both. But here I'm saying contrast because I'm telling how they're different. So the outside is sunny and mild and calm, but in contrast, paragraph 3 through 6 describes an indoor setting of dark and dusty. Front room. Unlike the outdoor setting, the room is not mild or calm. Instead, it is the site of a noisy fight between two brothers. You can write this down if you're having trouble, or you can put something similar in your own words. You do need to tell how they are alike and different, and cite text-based evidence.